Carrick is with us from REA. So good to have him in the studio with us. And yes, we are physically distanced. Everything is good in those respects. As we talk about REA, its breadth across Indiana County. I don't think as many people realize it as probably should, Chad. But you have a really, really extensive presence here in Indiana County. By the way, our conversation brought to you by Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. With so much territory to cover, most of it rural, of course, being rural electric, winter becomes a very interesting season for you folks at REA, doesn't it? There's a lot that can go wrong that you have to take steps ahead of time to forestall.
Sure, and thank you for asking me here today. REA Energy, we cover all the rural sections of Indiana and Cambria County. We also get into the surrounding counties, such as Westmoreland, Clearfield, Blair County. But our main presence is in Indiana County. Our second largest presence is in Cambria County. Because we get the rural areas, of course, there's a lot of trees, a lot of obstacles, such as farmer fields, sometimes even livestock that we have to deal with. We have to get through fences. So we buy equipment that is made to handle that type of terrain. But the single most important thing that we do to prepare for winter is to keep our tree trimming program up.
Yeah.
We do put an end of the year push on depending on our budget. So if we can start next year's tree trimming early, which this year we can, we do go ahead and get that started, because for every mile of line that is cut, that just helps us have less outages, better reliability, but most importantly, keep our men safe. Every time there's an outage, there's a major safety issue that can occur.
Yeah.
Tree trimming really reduces that, because that's probably as dangerous as the electric lines themselves.
Those are trees, of course, that are around the lines, and there are certain guidelines I know that you follow. But then there's also the issue of dead trees nearby that could fall on those lines, and we all see them. Sometimes the bank gives way under a healthy tree, and you see it leaning on those lines. And I know it's a tremendous task to get everything taken care of. But especially in these last few years, the emerald ash borer brought down tons and tons of trees, and you had to deal with that.
Yes, the ash trees have been very problematic, because a lot of times they're on the verge of dying. They die fairly quick once they reach that point. We may go through and actually cut our right-of-ways, and our specifications are 40 foot width, 20 foot from each side of the pole, ground to sky. But there could always be that large ash tree that's kind of tucked back in there that was still growing when we were there, but within a year or two it did pass away and die, and then it falls in. It could be 70 feet tall, so of course cutting 20 feet off the right-of-way, it's still going to come in our right-of-way.
Yeah.
You can't get them all. That's why we do have well-trained men. We have contractors. We have contracted tree trimmers that know how to get that taken care of very quickly. Because where we go, you're always going to have trees come down. The trees are 70, 80 foot tall. We're not going to cut that wide. It's just too expensive. The width that we have will take care of most of the problems, branches falling down, small trees falling down. But when those big trees do fall, they are taking down our lines typically, because they are so large.
Yeah.
And there's no doubt about it, the ash trees have been one of our biggest problems when it comes down to trees falling down and taking down our lines.
Those wet, heavy snows that we anticipate around these parts. So we've been able to escape them for the most part these last few years, but you can't count on that happening every year. When those things come, trees come down, lines go with them.
Right. This time of the year in March is actually our cold season that we really keep our fingers crossed, because this is the time of year where you get potential ice storms.
Oh, yeah.
So what ends up happening is there's still some leaves on the trees as we speak. And this actually occurred probably 10 years ago. And actually, it was Halloween. Now, ice storm rolled through, and there was just enough leaves on the trees that ice coated not just the branches and the trunks, but the leaves that are still on the trees. So it added so much weight. And that ended up being a multiple-day outage for us. Once those trees do drop, the leaves do drop, that really helps us out a lot, because that's less weight if we do get that wet snow, or if we do get that ice storm.
Yeah.
What ends up happening in March is the leaves start to grow again, and you will get that ice storm. usually towards the end of March that can happen. And ice storms are the worst for us because those ice storms usually take a day or two to move on. Those trees keep falling, and our guys they're just kind of going fixing something. They'll end up going back because another tree came down.
Yeah.
So you're kind of chasing your tail in those situations. So we kind of keep our fingers crossed that there's no ice storms between now and Thanksgiving.
Sure.
After that, we're usually in pretty good shape unless there's something serious that comes through.
Well, you mentioned the danger aspect of it to your workers. I mean, when you're talking an ice storm, just getting out there in it is a dangerous proposition because things get coated and it's very, very easy to have an accident. And so I know that you do the best in terms of training and just having those safety protocols in place. And man, those men and women who do that, they're special people, aren't they?
They absolutely are. And it's a life calling for them. Any lineman that you get that applies for a job, you start to talk to them, and it's almost like when you talk to a firefighter, and they knew when they were a child that they wanted to get into that. Linemen and our other workers, same type of thing. It was something they wanted to do. As a matter of fact, a lot of times it's multi-generational. So we have workers whose grandparents were linemen for us in the past. And it really takes a special person because somebody that's willing to go out in that situation, climb a pole, cut a tree, you got to be brave, and you got to have a purpose of serving members or consumers.
Yeah.
And so for them, it truly is a life calling. We have some great people that really dedicated. They get called out sometimes 2 or 3 nights in a row. They'll get called out in the middle of the night. They take their calls, and they get to work, and we appreciate that.
All right. So for the average consumer of electricity with REA, you're going to have a time or two during the course of the year when your power goes out. In wintertime, that becomes especially problematic because it might be a little bit more difficult to get it back on. I have to tell you that in the last 10 or 15 years, I can't imagine that we have had anything more than a couple of hours of power outages, and usually it's within the hour that it's fixed. But we understand that there's the possibility that could happen. What can folks do to prepare themselves for an electric outage? I know that REA has a service where you can actually get your generator through REA if you'd like to do that.
Correct. Yes. First and foremost, make sure, especially if you're in an area that's more remote, which we have a lot of that on our system, make sure you have your medications, make sure you have enough basic essentials, food, water. Obviously, if something happens, there's a heating issue that occurs because pretty much everything except for something that burns wood or something that burns coal needs electric. Even your gas furnace still needs electric. If you have medical issues, make sure that you don't wait to call emergency services or to call somebody. But having those basic essentials taken care of. If it's going to be a long outage, the best thing to do is find a friend or a family member, maybe go stay with them for a little bit. We're very proud of our response time, but if there's something that's system-wide, it could take several days. We do update our website as best we can based off of the information we're getting from the field to kind of give people an idea, an estimate as to when there will be restoration. But when push comes to shove, we always just recommend to people that you know your situation better than we do. Take action, assume that the worst can happen, because sometimes it's not even us, it could be from the grid. So the transmission lines coming into our substations that we don't own sometimes can go down. And in those cases, we really don't know when it can be up. We work with that transmission company. But bottom line is, you know your situation better than we do. So take matters in your own hands to get yourself safe.
And obviously, keep the number on hand to call REA. When you do call REA during a power outage, the great thing is that your number is already in the system, and so they can tell you if that's already been reported. And usually when you call, you'll get an estimate. You know, we estimate power will be restored in X amount of time.
Right.
And that's very, very helpful.
Yes.
We're talking with Chad Carrick from REA this morning as we enter into the winter season, and we think about how REA is able to react. Some of your lines go through deep woods, and I know that obviously you don't like that situation in the middle of winter.
Right.
But and that's the bottom line. That's a fact of life for REA, and so it could be quite the hike to get back there and fix whatever the problem is.
Right. And we have in the past few years purchased equipment because they may have to, our men might have to take a transformer back there. They definitely have to take their tools with them, their climbing gear. So we bought equipment so the men could get back there safely. We also have track machine so we can get back there safely and work on poles that maybe aren't climbable. But even more importantly, as we rebuild our lines, we're moving them to areas that are safer. So as we go through and we reinvest in our system to rebuild our lines that maybe are 40, 50 years old, we will move those closer to the road or to a safer area that is more clear, more flat, and more accessible.
A couple of things before we're done, and we're almost finished with our time with Chad Carrick this morning. First of all, pandemic, of course, it has to affect everybody, including REA, office hours, and things of that nature. Where do you stand on that? Are people back in the office now?
Yeah, most of our people are back in the office because we are an essential service. We have closed our lobby at the Indiana office. Our Evansburg office is open, mainly because Indiana is having a surge right now. We do monitor those statistics on a daily basis to make sure that we're adjusting to the outbreak in the area. But our drive-through is open at the Indiana office, and we can do anything through the drive-through. And we've enhanced our web portal services so those that have internet access can go ahead and do their business through our website as well.
And one other thing, of course, broadband is a great big issue. And REA last year announced that it was in the process of exploring whether or not REA would be able to get into that game. I know that you've been looking at this for a number of years, and Senator Pittman with an announcement last week that could help to move that process along. But I'm assuming those explorations still go on with REA, correct?
Yes, absolutely. And COVID-19 has really changed the landscape of broadband, rural broadband. And we are working with all contractors, providers out there to see how we could take advantage of not just COVID-19 CARES money that's available, but also the legislation that Senator Pittman championed to get this proliferated. And there's some very positive developments that are occurring in both counties that we haven't seen in years. You know, we've been working on this. I worked with Commissioner Rob Ruddick in the past, probably 16 years ago, to get this pushed through. I haven't seen it this positive since then. So we're very optimistic that this is going to get moving. And of course, we have the infrastructure in place, and we're doing everything we can to help that get proliferated as quickly as possible.
Terrific. We'll look forward to watching the latest developments in that. Chad, thanks so much for coming in to visit with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
He's Chad Carrick, REA, getting ready for winter. You should too. Oh, by the way, I mentioned that REA does have the generators or other appliances that
Right.
are available at low cost to REA and to its consumers. How do people take advantage of that? Website?
Yeah, they could go through our website or just call the office, and we'll get them connected with the right people.
Very good. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160 FM and AM 1160 FM.